Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session. The focus is a practical guide to simplifying ransomware data protection and recovery for hybrid cloud environments. My name is Andy Fernandez. I'm a director of product marketing here at Haiku, and I'm joined by Amy.
Hey guys, I'm Amy Hansen. I run Data Protection Alliances here at Nutanix.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. So quick housekeeping notes. This session will be recorded. If you have any questions, please press chat function, or also any asset, any resource and link that we allude to, they will be available for you to download and click at the end of the session as well. I look forward to your questions, and I hope that you have a good time here. So quick agenda today. We're going to do a quick introduction about Haiku, about Nutanix, and then we're going to really get into the cyber threat landscape. Not only how ransomware attacks and other cyber attacks have evolved and have become more dangerous and higher volume and frequency of attacks, but also how cybersecurity strategies have had to evolve as well. After that, we're going to get into best practices. Really, when you're making a decision on your infrastructure, when you're making a decision on your data protection, and really understanding how are you building this for a hybrid cloud world, but making sure that you are safe from ransomware as well. So we're going to give you a good selection criteria to understand really how to make a good decision. And then from there, we're going to go into a solution overview of Haiku plus Haiku Protege plus Nutanix. And ultimately, we are going to get into a couple of questions. So please, we will make sure to monitor the chat function as well. All right, Amy, you ready?
I'm ready, Andy.
Sweet. Could you give us a quick overview about Nutanix?
Of course, thanks. So Nutanix was founded in 2009 by engineers from some of the big hyperscalers that you guys are well aware of. And we've since morphed from basically an infrastructure company that created private cloud infrastructure in your own data center, really to a big hybrid multi-cloud software-defined infrastructure provider. And our vision is to make clouds invisible. We want you to be able to move your data and your apps wherever it makes sense to put them, and do so very easily. And we like to give everybody freedom of choice. You can put your data where you want, on whatever hardware platform you want, and whichever cloud you want. And our mission, obviously, is to delight our customers, and that is proven by our 90+ NPS score that we achieve over and over and over again.
Thanks, Amy. I appreciate that. I think it'll be hard for folks not to know who Nutanix is, which is great. Now, for those folks who don't know who Haiku is, we are backed by Bain Capital, a crew of strategic investments from Atlassian, Cisco Investments, and Okta Ventures. We have partnerships with folks like Nutanix, some of the top infrastructure providers as well, and we also have an NPS over 90 and support as well. We're actually based in Boston as well, for those folks who are local. And we make sure that data protection is in every decision that we make. It's our DNA. So we leverage experience developing industry-leading products from our engineering organization to create a data protection solution and service that you can rely on. One very important thing to know about Haiku as well, especially when it comes to the context of Nutanix, is this is not a solution that requires agents and plugins that was modified for Nutanix or modified for the public cloud. It was purpose-built for Nutanix, for enterprise clouds, and for public clouds as well. And ultimately, we have over 3,200 customers in over 75 countries and growing with a worldwide customer base. But now that you have a quick overview of Nutanix and Haiku as well, let's really get into what we want to talk about today, which is the cyber threat landscape. I think we all get bombarded with ransomware statistics. You see it all the time. It used to be there was a ransomware attack every 22 seconds, and then it was 15 seconds, and then it was 9 seconds. I'm sure by the end of the decade, it will be every single second there will be a ransomware attack. But ultimately, what matters here for your organization, regardless if you're SMB, commercial, mid-market, or even a Fortune 500 organization, the reality is that ransomware has become something that is disruptive to your business. One of the stats that really matter here is that the average downtime after a ransomware attack is 21 days, right? That is the average number of time that it takes for you to get your applications back up and running, right? We're talking critical applications that fuel your business. And so what we're seeing here is that the threat is real. We know that it's extremely damaging and disruptive. It can actually lead to your organization losing its ability to transact and gain revenue. And what we're seeing is there's an increase in both the volume of the attacks, but also the severity. These attacks are becoming much more sophisticated. Cybersecurity is one of the few industries where the scale of innovation is on the side of a criminal. And the industry is always catching up and to avoid the next vulnerability, the next zero-day attack. And what organizations, these cyber criminal organizations, have done very well is they've learned that it makes sense to target critical data protection infrastructure to make sure to understand, has this organization made any mistakes in the way they've configured their infrastructure or even their backup and DR services as well. But when I talk about the increase in the volume and the severity attacks, there are really two big reasons for this. The primary driver of the volume of these attacks is what we like to call ransomware as a service. This is where you can go on the dark web and you can purchase everything that you need in order to effectively, almost a low-code solution for you to deploy a ransomware attack. You can buy the emails of the organizations you want to target. You can buy the malware. You can buy the scripts. You can buy everything that you need to do. And there's not a high barrier to entry from a tech perspective. This is driving an explosion of growth in these types of attacks. And then you get into even much more serious scenarios where you have nation state backed attacks where no one takes credit for it, but we all know where they come from. And these are well thought out, very high profile organizations that have a lot of technical capabilities and time for R&D. And they're able to really deliver disruptive attacks to critical infrastructure. We're talking financial institutions, healthcare, energy, oil sector, and things like that. So we have a good understanding that this problem it's not going to go away. It's only getting worse, and these organizations are getting more intelligent. So how have we evolved? How have organizations evolved in their response to this? Well, let's rewind to 20 years back, where you as an organization were responsible for kind of a central primary data center. It was on-prem only. There were no cloud applications. There was no Kubernetes. You were simply running virtual applications on-prem, and there were one type of applications that you could monitor for. Think of this as a castle, right? Why not focus everything that you have from a cybersecurity perspective on making sure that people cannot get in? It is a focus on prevention. But then things changed, right? We saw people not just having physical and virtual infrastructure, but you moved on to being able to use the public cloud, to use things like SaaS applications. Now, Microsoft 365, Salesforce, these applications are critical to businesses. They don't live on your on-premises data center. And ultimately, you have all these types of applications and an explosion in the amount of people who can access them and be able to have them disparate across the world. So what does that mean? Well, now it means that you can pretty much bet that something will happen. You cannot focus on prevention if your data, your critical data, and the people accessing them are everywhere, are global. And so the focus here is not saying don't continue to invest in prevention. That's absolutely crucial to always make sure that your organization, your data center, your applications are fortified. But what it's saying is you have to make sure that if or when something happens, you're able to recover and that you're able to recover quickly. So this kind of end-to-end understanding from a cybersecurity perspective is what we like to refer to as cyber resilience. So with that being said, we've painted a big scary picture here, but there are a lot of things that organizations can do in mastering the basics. I always like to allude to, if anybody watches basketball, Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan was not the flashiest player, but he was a Hall of Famer, one of the best players of all time by mastering the fundamentals. They called him the big fundamental for a reason, and it's obvious why. He mastered the basics. You see a lot of organizations spending a lot of money on very sophisticated tools in order to be able to have a strong cybersecurity tech stack, but they're not mastering the basics. And here are a couple that we can talk about. The number one is, in every decision that you make, choose simplicity. So many of these attacks that are successful happen because of human error, because of misconfiguration, because somebody forgot to patch, they didn't upgrade consistently, they didn't monitor for vulnerabilities. So just being able to choose simplicity is crucial in everything that you do. Do not over-architect. And then from a protection perspective as well, on the identity side, you have to make sure that everything that you do, that you're able to leverage multi-factor authentication, that you have single sign-on. And very important as well, role-based access control, especially as we talk about infrastructure today, right? Even on the hyperconverged side or on the data protection side, you have to make sure that you can meter access and give people different roles, not just full access for everybody. And especially when we're talking about today in hybrid cloud world, if you have a Nutanix environment, but you're looking at DR and backup to the public cloud, you have to make sure that you use their identity access management as well. One critical thing here as well, and it seems very remedial, but simply having an understanding and visibility of where your infrastructure and critical applications are is crucial. And then another major best practice is making sure that you have continuous training and education. And this one goes without being said, but always make sure that you're up to date on any vulnerability or exposure that happens in an organization. But let's talk about today. Let's talk about what we're here to talk about today with Nutanix and Haiku. These are objective best practices that you need to follow when it comes to an infrastructure perspective. And Amy and I had this conversation before around if you're able to simply do these things alone, you're already setting yourself up for success and for cyber resilience. And on the infrastructure side of the house, fundamentals, being able to have encryption of your data at rest. If something happens, that you have network and application segmentation that allows you to limit the spread of an infection. Being able to spot anomalies immediately. There's a huge difference between spotting something the hour it happens and then 2 weeks later during a forensics analysis. And then ultimately, you also want consistent security configuration. This is an area where you cannot afford to make mistakes, and you need to make sure that your organization and your infrastructure is configured effectively. And on the backup, the recovery, the DR side of the house with, what we're going to refer to as Haiku later, is you also want to make sure that it's when your data is moved from one place to another, that is encrypted, that you have that ability to recover from an immutable air-gapped copy at any point in time. And ultimately, we've talked about the 3-2-1 rule, whether it's in the NIST framework or even 20 years ago, 3-2-1 rule was something that was fundamental. We have to think beyond that, because what 3-2-1 rule doesn't account for are SLAs, your recovery point objectives, your recovery time objectives. We've seen organizations who've paid the ransom. They had their backups available to recover, but it would have taken them days and days to get back up and running using those backups. So they chose to pay the ransom. So it shows you that you have to think with SLAs in mind as well. And it's not just a binary decision of, can I recover? Yes, we can pass the test. It's about, well, how long will it take us to recover? Can we recover our applications consistently? And these are crucial elements to take into when you're evaluating decisions on infrastructure platforms, but also on who's protecting your data. So with that in mind, what I want to do is really get into this joint solution of Nutanix and Haiku Protege. So what I'll do is I'll transition over to Amy, who can really tell you about the Nutanix Cloud Platform and a lot of the things that deliver value from a cybersecurity perspective as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, Nutanix really aimed to simplify basically what was known as legacy infrastructure. So we took, your storage, compute, and networking layers and really condensed them down into simple, easy to scale out nodes, eliminating the need for different user interfaces, different specialists on staff. Andy said over and over again, simplicity is key, and we totally agree with that. So we really want to make infrastructure and hybrid cloud simple. How does that play into what we're talking about today with ransomware? So we all know that you can't have one single solution to help combat this issue. You need a multi-layered approach and, what's referred to as a defense in-depth strategy. So here's how Nutanix helps you achieve that. So, we offer micro-segmentation with, again, a super simple platform called Flow. So you can segment your networks, blocking traffic from here, there, and everywhere that you don't want anybody to have access to. The infrastructure platform will be based on object store, so S3 compatible object store, which is inherently write once, read many, or worm technology, which makes it very difficult for attackers to access that data. The platform is automatically machine hardened and secured right out of the box if it happens to be on-prem. I hate to refer to hardware, but I think that's still the world that some of us live in. There are user-defined role-based access controls built in that help you kind of determine who has access to what data. And all of that is through our management interface called Prism. Again, really super simple, single user interface to access all of these features. And Andy also mentioned patch and upgrade management earlier, which is super important for maintaining your security posture. So Nutanix has a simple patch and upgrade management platform called Nutanix Lifecycle Management that is built into all of our software-defined platforms. I mentioned Flow for microsegmentation. We also have automatic intrusion detection as well, and anomaly detection tools built in. So all of these built-in inherent features that come with your Nutanix software, everybody gets these tools right out of the box, is a really great first step in making sure that you guys are, your posture is hardened against ransomware attacks. Like I said, though, that's only one part of the puzzle. So Andy's going to go into how Haiku gives us another layer for that multi-layered approach.
Thanks, Amy. I appreciate that. I think one of the things that we've seen in the industry is we've seen sometimes folks in the past get carried away with saying, they're the magic bullet from a cybersecurity perspective. And I think if history has shown anything, it's that there is no one single solution that can both stop and help you recover from anything. It is
100%.
Defense in depth, but also, dare I say, defense and recovery as well, making sure that you have a response to anything that happens, from a very basic attack to something much more advanced that requires you to recover. And now that we're talking about recovery, that's where Haiku Protege for Nutanix comes in, right? Haiku Protege, it's going to work with AHV, ESX. It's going to be able to work with your public cloud environments, even things like mine and files as well. So really making sure that you fundamentally can address the 3-2-1 rule, and that you can protect data on-prem and to the cloud as well. But here is what I believe to be the magic of Haiku, is how effectively, number one, it's purpose built for Nutanix. So it's going to leverage all of the value and capabilities of Nutanix as well, without adding the need for agents and the impact that agents and plugins bring to your organization and to your production environments. So one of the things that we talked about as well is choosing simplicity as a best practice. What Haiku does as well, once again, I'll hop on this a lot, the value of being purpose-built is that there's near zero maintenance of Haiku Protege on your Nutanix environment. It's an extremely simple deployment with upgrades, and it can be done in minutes. This is going to reduce a lot of the errors and mistakes that are made that lead to vulnerabilities within organizations. The other one is it runs as a virtual app. It's secure and it has no additional licenses or licensing costs associated with it. And it's designed for a modular enterprise scale. Regardless if you are protecting 10 VMs or you're protecting 100 VMs, 250 VMs, Haiku will not change the way that it performs. It will not change the scope of protection. It is simple, it is scalable, and it is enterprise ready. And ultimately, what we want here as far as simplicity is also having a unified experience. That's where Haiku can deliver built-in reporting, self-service capabilities, and more. And here comes, the balance that every CISO, every CIO has to make, which is I need to keep costs down, but I also need to make sure that we have a response to any type of cybersecurity incident. And it used to be a decision between the two. Now you can have the best of both worlds, which is making sure that with Haiku's software-only approach, you're able to effectively protect things and then also protect the applications as well. One of the things that Haiku does very well is the patented application awareness. So you have automatic application discovery, which is huge, having that visibility and then being able to protect them effectively. And then, as I mentioned and have harped on for the last 20 minutes probably, is that Haiku is purpose-built to protect all of your AHV, ESX, volume groups, Nutanix files, and much more. It is here if you are looking to stay on premises, if you're looking to have a hybrid cloud environment where you're backing up and performing DR to the cloud, or even a multi-cloud environment. There has been no sacrifices made when it comes to protection and performance with Haiku. Regardless of what you're protecting, there are no agents, there's zero impact. It was purpose-built for that as well. Now, how does this all apply to the NIST framework, the way that as an organization, as a cybersecurity posture, you're able to understand at every stage of these attacks or of our cybersecurity department, how are we preparing ourselves? And Amy pretty much covered it in how she talked about Nutanix multi-layered approach. And it all starts with making sure that you can prevent attacks, that you have protection in place, being able to ensure that your infrastructure and your data protection data are secure. As we mentioned, again, this is just these basic things will make such a difference in your organization. And it's making sure that you have a copy of your data at all time that you can recover from. She mentioned worm, she mentioned immutability, air gap solutions that allow you to know that I have something that I can recover from just in case it happens. The other one is making sure that you have a streamlined maintenance and patching for all of your infrastructure. This should be very easy, this should be risk-free, and this should be able to reduce that for your organization. Ultimately, MFA, single sign-on, role-based access control, this is something that both Nutanix and Haiku can deliver, and network segmentation, as she mentioned already as well. And ultimately, fundamentals, data is encrypted at rest and in flight. Then comes the detection side. Amy had already mentioned a lot of the auto detection, a lot of the anomaly detection. That is critical. We know something will happen. You have to be ready and have full visibility into your environment. But it's not just about that, but that you have a response that's set up in place with codeless automation or even event triggers. Something that Nutanix does so well is also allowed for integrated partner solutions. So you have things like deep packet inspection and threat intelligence. And ultimately, we know that even if a recovery is successful, there is going to be an analysis done after an attack, especially things that are high profile. So you want to make sure that you have policy and event logging for everything. You have that both with Haiku and you have that with Nutanix as well. And then hopefully this is not a stage that you have to encounter as an organization, but if or when something happens, that you have the ability to recover your applications consistently with assurance of your RTOs. Not knowing when that application is going to be fully and consistently recovered is a problem. But also there are different types of attacks. You have very basic attacks that might just require file restore. You have other attacks that might require you being able to leverage DR capabilities. And ultimately having that self-service in place and an extra layer of protection with dev test and cloning is critical for your organization. So if you leave this discussion just with a couple of things in mind, when it comes to making a decision on your infrastructure, when it comes to making a decision on your data protection, these, in my opinion, are the key highlights of this solution. It's built security first. Every decision that was made from an engineering perspective for both Nutanix and Haiku was done with security in mind. The other one is simplicity. I like to refer to this as one-click management. That things that you have to do every day, that you have to monitor as an organization, should not take more than a few clicks. And ultimately, regardless of your current strategy or the strategy of the future for your organization, that Haiku and Nutanix can support you on-prem, public cloud, or even in multi-cloud environments. Detection is always going to be crucial. I cannot emphasize that enough. And then having that insurance of knowing that there's a copy of data that you can protect, and that when that happens, that you can recover that data very quickly with an app-centric point in mind, that's critical. So really the message today is, first of all, even before you get into this buying a solution, Nutanix and Haiku, that you have an understanding of the fundamentals. And then when you do so, you really have to understand, I need to pick a solution that's simple. I need to pick a solution that was end-to-end thought with security in mind, and that allows me to recover effectively. And that's what we hope to do so today. But with that in mind, there's a couple of resources that we're going to leave, but one of them, this is something that your CISO, CIOs, everyone in the organization should be aware of. And that's our State of Ransomware Preparedness Report that we've done with Actual Tech Media. I encourage you to read it. You will see a link in the chat. You will be able to download this and really get an understanding for where do I sit as an organization? How am I able to effectively protect myself? And what kind of solutions are in place that I can utilize to further my cyber resilience? Here's one of my favorite things as well, and that's what we call our score. That's powered by Haiku. Most organizations have some sort of checklist, especially CISOs, where they can understand effectively how an organization how they face a ransomware attack or any type of cyber attack incident. But one of the things that Haiku did really well is, we worked with academics, we worked with security companies to really build out a fundamental deep dive assessment of a cybersecurity framework that not just is focused on recovery, because that would be convenient for us, but also on detection, response, and protection. Now, what this does is think of it almost as a FICO score for your organization. Where do you stand from a cyber resilience perspective? We have two versions of this. We have a free web version at getourscore.org. You will see that in the chat as well, where you can go in and answer a couple questions and really get a high level understanding of where your organization sits. Or you can get an in-depth consultation that really tells your organization, here are all the vulnerabilities that you have, here are best practices to follow, here are things that need to change immediately. And ultimately, you want to be able to simply see how the product works. You can listen to us here on the marketing side and listen to all that we have to brag about Haiku and Nutanix, but getting a demo and really seeing the product will speak for itself. And you can request specifically, I want to be able to see a demo of how Haiku works with Nutanix, your choice of Nutanix flavor, and you'll be able to see it. You can scan the QR code, or you can simply go to haiku.com, select request a demo, and within hours, you'll be seeing a full live demo with our engineering team as well. So with that, I want to thank you all for your time. I want to thank you, Amy, as well, for such a good discussion around Nutanix, even things that I wasn't even aware of as well from a security perspective. And I think we have a little bit of time for questions, don't we?
Awesome. Yeah, I think we do. So, Andy, I get a ton of questions from my sales force, from our customers on, agentless backup. They're looking for something simple, something low on resources. I think you mentioned it a couple times throughout the presentation, so I think I already know the answer to this, but does Haiku utilize agents?
Yeah, no, it's good to be brought up because it's such an important point. You see a lot of organizations that built a very successful product in the past, focus on one type of infrastructure. Let's say virtualization on-prem. And they've built that to protect it extremely well. And when they encounter new markets, when they encounter new opportunities, thriving infrastructure organizations like Nutanix or the public cloud as well, what happens? Well, they have all this great engineering that was done. It's just simply much easier to slap plugins or agents on there and just simply make it work. But then it detracts from the experience. And Haiku does not do that. Haiku has taken the time, the resource, and the engineering efforts to build things meant for that solution. That includes Nutanix, and that includes the public cloud as well.
Awesome. That actually is a good transition into my next question. So, as you know, Nutanix recently announced our support on Azure, Microsoft Azure. So that was announced at Ignite out in Vegas. And we've been live on AWS for a while. GCP is sometime in the future. So how does Haiku work, if a user wants to have some data on-prem on their Nutanix infrastructure and then maybe on our clusters product, which lives in AWS or Azure?
Yeah, absolutely. We refer to it as, Protege, Haiku Protege, especially when we're talking Nutanix public cloud. It delivers purpose-built backup, DR, and migration. You can use Haiku to lift and shift into Nutanix. You could also use it to several use cases. For example, you can use the public cloud simply for offsite copies. You want to be able to replace tape. You want to be able to have an offsite copy in the public cloud, long-term retention, and even having those worm copies available for you as well. Haiku is able to do that. Haiku works extremely well from a DR perspective with the replication that Nutanix offers as well. So there's different decisions there to be made around, you can back up to public cloud with Haiku and Nutanix. You can fail over to the public cloud and fail back, or you can also perform a migration. And one of the things that we don't stop at there is making sure that if you have a massive Nutanix and environment, and you all start growing and adopting additional workloads in the public cloud, that you're able to protect those as well. So ultimately, one thing that I'll mention too from a security perspective is you see a lot of organizations effectively back up to the public cloud, and they do not effectively manage their identities up there, right? They do a really good job on-prem, but then they're not using Azure AD or Identity Access Management with AWS. And we make sure to natively integrate with those to avoid any type of additional vulnerabilities.
That's great. Andy, I think we've given people a really great summary of how to implement a multi-layered approach using, Nutanix inherent security features and the magic of Haiku. So thank you so much for including me today. And I hope I hope we get to do this again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Amy. And thank you, everybody who was attending. I hope you have a good day.